Episode 199, Ironman Arizona with professional triathlete Natasha Merwe. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Natasha Merwe about her recent race at Ironman Arizona that took place on November 18th, 2018. The temperature on race day was 52 and rose to 73 with the water temperature being 61 degrees. She had a time of 9 hours, 27 minutes, and 12 seconds and is ready to share her experience about her race day. Welcome back to the show, Natasha. I look forward to spending some time with you today.
Hi, thanks for inviting me back.
Hey, you're welcome. So how have you been since Waco?
I've been good. I actually had a really good recovery from Waco and pretty much got back into training right after that. Like I recovered for a couple days of just easy workouts, but I mean, I was still moving, feeling pretty good. And then I was able to get in a couple key workouts before Arizona, before tapering off. So yeah, I was happy with the way I recovered, and I was happy with the way I built into it those final 3 weeks.
Right, because you only had 3 weeks between Waco 70.3 and Arizona. What key workouts were you wanting to get in?
I was wanting to get in my last one more long ride, one more long run. I really focused more on race specificity, just kind of like what I did before Waco 70.3. Like that's what you do the final weeks, is making sure that you're hitting the power targets or a little bit above for the bike, and then same thing on the run. And so I have a staple workout I always do. I think I mentioned it maybe for the Waco 70.3 podcast, but I like to do like a descending ladder, and that I've done the last 2-3 years. And it's basically I work from 30 minutes down, and you do 30 minutes at race effort, and I make sure on the bike that my race power that I want to hit matches up with the heart rate. And then I work down 30 minutes, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. And each one, I try to have my average normalized power be a little bit higher. And so I did that workout. Like the intervals alone are almost 2 hours. And then, with a little warm up and recovery between each interval and warm down, it easily, becomes a 4-hour workout before you know it. And I was able for all those intervals to hold my goal Ironman power and a little bit above. So I was very confident with that. And then like a staple run workout I've been doing recently. And it was funny, I was listening to another podcast and someone else mentioned the exact same workout. Like, yeah, we hear this workout all the time. And I was like, yeah, I'm also doing it. But it's basically the 800 repeat workout with the 200 float in between. And so I did a 30 by 800 at Ironman goal. I actually, when I'm training, I go by heart rate, because a lot of the times my race day is, instead of pacing, I try to hit like a range of heart rate. And so for me, it's like 146 to 152. And so I did 30 by 800, getting my heart rate in that range, which for that day was like 640s to 650s. And then I do a 200 float in between. And so I ended up getting 17 miles, and my average for that run was sub 7. And so that was super confidence building. And it felt easy. You go to the
track and you run 30 by 800s.
Yes. With a 200 float in between. So I just keep running and like 30K essentially.
Oh my
God. And
gosh.
around the track. And then I change the direction like every 3 or 4. And then I just get a sip of water when I need to, usually depending on the weather. Like if it's super hot, I'll get a sip of water every hour, not hour, but mile. Or if it's colder, then maybe every 2 miles, I'll just stop to grab a sip of water or some nutrition and then keep going.
Wow.
And
there was a lot of people at the track and watching you run around in circles for hours on end?
Yeah. What was funny is there was like this local high school running team that came by, and they came while I was already, I think I was about 5 or 6 in, and they stretched, warmed up, and then they would hit the trail because the track is right next to the Town Lake running trail. And they went and did their workout on the trail. They came back and I was still going. And I knew a couple of those boys because I used to teach them. I teach one of them in triathlon a little while ago and running actually. And he passed a comment, you're like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of workout is this? And then I mentioned it. And I specifically remember all the boys were like, what? Like, this is crazy. So.
Wow.
But crazy enough, it's a staple workout. So that I know many other people do. Man.
So after you get done with that workout, how was your recovery afterwards?
It was fine, actually. Yeah, I think, running on the track, it's a lot softer on the body versus running out on the road or on concrete. And then I went to, which I think I mentioned the last time, like I was using Generator Athlete Lab, which they have these hot and cold tubs. And so actually the lab was like 5 minutes away from the track. So I just immediately went straight there. And I got it like the hot and cold tubs where you go like 3 minutes in the hot tub, 3 minutes in the cold tub, and you do that like 3 or 4 times. And I literally felt brand new. Like I was totally fine afterwards. And then just to make sure that I recovered properly, I still came home and I did a spin. So I got some good blood flow that way for active recovery. And I always find that helps me recover from runs super easy or super quickly. And then I believe I swam a little bit that afternoon as well, just to continue to flush out the legs. So, yeah, I was fine.
Wow. So with the 30 by 800, are you doing a warm up and a cool down as well?
Yeah. Just about a mile warm up and a mile cool down.
Wow.
And that was the week after Waco. And then that was my last longish run.
Well, and most people right after Waco are thinking, okay, well, my season is done. Time to prep for Thanksgiving. And you're over here like, nope, time to prep for Arizona.
Yep.
Man. So with all of your runs and bikes, do you have a certain stretching routine you go through after every workout? What is this like?
Yeah, so I have a stretching routine before every workout and then after every workout as well. And
Really?
so before every single bike and run, I do what I call like my prehab routine, which consists of what someone would say activation and then some stretching. And so it's really just opening up the hips. And so it's like a couple lunges, the front to the side, and just making sure, I feel like the hips are open and stretched out. And then I'll do some bridges and I'll do some clamshells and I'll do some side leg raises. It's like all those stupid little exercises you go to the PT and they have you do to make sure your glutes are active. And that's what I do before every single workout. And I feel like I'm ready to go. And then after the workout, and then I'll do some rolling out as well. And then after the workout, I'll typically just do, again, a little bit of mobility exercises. After big runs, if I can and there's a wall, I'll elevate my legs as well. I feel like that helps. And then I'll roll out again, usually not right after, but a little bit later. I think that's about it.
Wow. So going into this race of Arizona, you already had your lodging and all that booked. You were going to fly out there and all that fun stuff. How are you going to get your bike out there?
Yeah, I used a local Texas company called I Love My Bike Transport. And they're based out of Dallas, but they pick up everywhere around Texas. And I believe they even go to like Oklahoma and surrounding states as well. And that was awesome because they have they work with Bicycle World. And so I was able to drop my bike off at Bicycle World and get it all cleaned up. And I let them do that. I'm spoiled in that way. And then, and so I dropped it off like 2 days before pickup. And it's literally, you don't have to take your bike apart at all. And so next year I was already looking at like the races I Love My Bike Transport is transporting to, so that I don't have to box up my bike at all next year. Cause, as you know, you can always have some mechanical issues when you do that. But yeah, I just dropped off my bike as is, and he racks it in the trailer. He takes the front wheel off and, he racks it by the front fork into like a wheel mount. And then the wheel, goes next to the bike. And I think you know this, but we actually designed that transport company. I feel like it was 7 years ago. So there's a main national company called Tri-Bike Transport, right, where they put bikes in a trailer and they just basically put blankets in between the bikes. and then kind of lean them against each other. And that's how they transported to get a lot of bikes across to races. And we're like, no, let's see if we can actually like rack each bike so that it touches nothing else. And so we were actually one of the first companies to do that. And then we sold our company a while back to Cycle Chauffeur, and well, it became Cycle Chauffeur, and then Cycle Chauffeur actually with Kevin, and then Kevin actually worked with us. He was awesome, and so we basically sold it to Kevin, and then Kevin actually sold out, and then I Love My Bike Transport kind of filled the space. And so now Omar is transporting bikes in this area.
Wow. I transported my bike with Kevin a few times, and I have nothing but great things to say about him and his company. But I know he had to move on with his life and get on with different avenues. So it was fun. So going into being that we've already talked a lot about your training with Waco and all the preparation, all that fun stuff, and your life work balance. You can listen to the Waco episode for all that. So we'll just kind of skip into the meat of things here. What was the most hours you trained in 1 week going into Arizona?
Well, I think I mentioned already, like going in before Waco, I was putting in a lot of like 26 to 28 hour weeks. And then I didn't get that high in between, those final 3 weeks. Like the week of recovery, man, I still think I hit about 18 that week after Waco. And then that following week, I think I hit about 24, 25. And then I tapered down that final week. So I'd say that 2 weeks before, I still hit about 25.
Wow. So what did your taper consist of?
The usual, actually. So Monday is always like a mobility workout. I use Easy Fit Boulder, Erin Carson from Rally Sports, and she has an app of kind of strength training and mobility. And so she has this awesome little mobility routine. I do that a whole bunch on race week. And so I start with that on Monday with a swim, and then bike on Tuesday. I always do kind of a bike with some race specific work and a little bit above, because Ironman power is obviously not very high. So you always want to work above that. But very short intervals with a run, same thing with a couple pickups just to make sure the legs feel sharp. Another swim. Wednesday, I did another short run, about 30, 40 minutes with another swim, probably about 3K. And then we left on Thursday morning, but I got on the bike before we left for the airport, and I just do another pretty easy ride with a couple pickups. And then when we got to Arizona, I did some mobility just to loosen up, and then we found a pool. We actually went to a Lifetime. I found a pool and swam for like 30, 40 minutes. And then the Friday before the race, I always do like a 25-minute, 30-minute easy run with pickups, some mobility work, and then Saturday's a little bit of everything. So I went out on the bike course and I rode for about 20, 25 minutes with a few pickups. I swam on the course, which I'm so pumped I did, because the water was so cold. And I feel like that prepared me for Sunday in a big way, because it was almost very shocking on the practice swim. But after I warmed up in a couple minutes, I was like, oh, I'm fine. Had I not done that practice swim, I think, and race morning got into that, I would have freaked out, like not knowing if I was going to warm up or not. And with that, actually, race morning actually felt warmer than the practice swim for some reason. So yeah, and then I just did a small little jog with some strides.
Wow. So after y'all got to Arizona, y'all got a rental car. I know you said it was pretty cheap.
Oh, yeah. So that's the beauty of racing in Arizona, is everything is super cheap. The flight there was with Southwest. It was direct. So it was like just a 2-hour flight. And I think it was just over $200. And then the car, I got this huge deal on Hotwire where I think it was like $100 for a car for 4 days, which is amazing. And then the hotel, I actually booked my hotel super late. And there were tons of hotels just across the river, which is, I guess, essentially Scottsdale, but, a mile and a half from the start. And it was also very cheap, like not the inflated rates you normally find with an Ironman. It was just like your normal, rate. And I stayed at the Best Western, where there was a ton of other triathletes there as well.
Wow. So going into this race, how was the athlete check-in and pro briefing?
Yeah, the athlete check-in was fine. I mean, it's one of those things too. You know, the race site is right next to downtown Tempe. So there's just tons of parking, and we always park at the same spot. There's like a Mexican food restaurant that's right there where all the bike transport companies set up. And so we just park there. We walk over. It's not even 100 meters. And, you know, as you know, with pros, we just kind of walk straight up to the pro desk. So it literally took me less than 5 minutes to walk to the desk, get my packet and leave. And I did that on Friday and then morning. And then the pro meeting was on Friday at 1. And that was at a hotel, just a little like in town, just a little bit off the race site. And that was also super easy to get into. Yeah, it was at I think the race hotel kind of conference room is where that was.
Wow. So you got a backpack and all that fun stuff as well?
Yeah, we do.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you've been doing Ironman and 70.3s for how many years now?
Oh my gosh, like 9, 10 years. So I have a lot of backpacks and t-shirts, and I actually save all of them because I send them back with my mom when she goes back to South Africa, and I have sisters who have kids. And so their cool factor really is enhanced because they get to walk around with these really cool Ironman backpacks and t-shirts, you know, from their aunt, I guess. And triathlon is massive in South Africa. Like it's literally on TV every single day. So everyone knows what an Ironman is.
Wow. So as you're getting closer to the race day, what are you doing from a nutrition aspect?
Yeah, so I pretty much eat normally for most of the week. And because my training volume has gone massively down, I try not to eat too much. The mistake I actually made for Waco is I actually didn't track or really think about what I was eating. And I actually went into Waco quite a bit heavier than I like to for a race. I don't know how much heavier. I just didn't want to step on a scale, but I could feel it and I can also see it. So for this race, I didn't want to make the same mistake. So I actually tracked on a Lose It app. Everything. I tracked my macros. I tracked my calories to make sure I didn't go like massively over what I was expending. And I did that all the way through till essentially Friday. And then Friday, I started to just up my carbs a little bit, but without going over the calories necessary. But then Saturday is just like a massive carb feast where I try to get in 10 grams of carbs per kilogram. And so we're looking at like 570 grams of carbs, with most of it going in the day before, like before noon, which is a lot of carbs. So
10 carbs per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you get to that calculation?
That's what I've read up as the recommended amount. And I know that you've spoken to many other pro triathletes and they do the exact same thing. So yeah, if you look at the sports science and you listen to a whole bunch of other references of people that know what they're doing, and was their recommendation. So that's what I followed.
Wow. So going into this race, what did you actually eat the day before the race?
Yeah. So the morning of, I woke up and had a little bit of oatmeal and banana. And I always make these little banana muffins at home. And so I took them with me and I snacked on that as well. Right after the bike workout, I had a couple more banana muffins, and because we went straight from there to the swim. And then after the swim, we went to a restaurant there called First Watch, and they have really good, clean food. And I had a pancake, just like 1 or 2 eggs, just to get a little bit of protein in with the avocado and some toast and some fruit.
Wow.
And then
so you're getting a little bit of healthy fats in there.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, I definitely want to, again, for me to get as much carbs as I want, every meal has to be super carb focused. I don't want to over flood the carbs with protein and fats. Otherwise, I'm just eating way too much. But I definitely want a little bit in there for sure. Yeah. And then outside of that, like I always have sweet potatoes. We actually had a friend, had us over for dinner on Thursday night, and she cooked us my staple, like sweet potatoes, steak, and vegetables. And then she cooked like 6 extra sweet potatoes, knowing that I really snack on that, like leading into the race. So I had like these perfectly baked sweet potatoes in the fridge at the hotel. And I literally just chomped on that for most of Saturday. And then I still had leftover my steak. And so I had some of that steak at lunch and then the rest of it at dinner. And then I think I had some yogurt, some homemade granola, which I make. So another piece of fruit, and oatmeal. Yeah, I just kind of kept it going.
Wow. So how is your anxiety and excitement levels going into this race?
Very little anxiety, to be honest. I was very, I think I'm past the point of being anxious about a race. For my nervous sake, like I know going into a race that there's a lot of things that I can control. And I know going in like nutrition and pacing, and I think that eases the anxiety a ton. And so I was and then the more prepared you are, I think the less anxious you are as well. So if anything, I was just excited to see what I could do. I know I felt more prepared than I ever had been going into an Ironman, and being that I did this Ironman last year, I was really excited to see like how much better I could be than I was a year ago. So I think it was just more excited. And then I think I was excited it was the last race of the season. I raced a lot this year. So I was ready to like completely lay it out there, knowing that I was going to be able to rest and kind of ease into the off season after that. Wow.
So going into this race, you felt really well prepared more than any other race?
Yeah, I think we discussed this last time too. Like, it took me a while. It's so funny. I've been doing this for 10 years, but you keep adjusting small things in your training plan. And I feel like I've adjusted it to the point, and it could be the smallest things of moving one over a day and seeing how much more effective you are on that key workout. I mean, the very littlest things. And I feel like I'd find the perfect blend for myself of intensity, volume, days that I could back workouts off each other. And I felt like I had that preparation going into Waco and into this race, which I hadn't had all year. I was still kind of experimenting with a couple things that I wanted to test out. And
So finding that perfect blend of intensity, volume, and what else did you say?
Yeah, intensity, volume, frequency, and just the routine of the days. One thing I had changed, again, because my daughter goes to school Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 1, is that I moved a lot of my workouts into that time frame. And so my long key ride, I moved to Friday. And so with that, shifting everything forwards ended up allowing for Sunday to be pretty much a rest day. Like it would be just super short active recovery instead of me having this long run and then going into Monday as a rest day. And I feel like that actually made a huge difference, like both physically in the recovery standpoint, but then also emotionally. Like I felt like I had that Sunday to go to church, have family time, and then attack the week fresh. And I just made a huge difference in the performance of my workouts.
Right. And I mean, if we just compare your time from last year, this year, you had a PR of 10 minutes here.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, yeah.
So that actually was a good thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, look, last year and this year was very different. Last year, I was still working essentially full time for most of the year. And so, cause I was, the director of triathlon at Austin Aquatics and Sports Academy all the way through till I think it was September. And then I was just training part-time, very little. And then it was only like essentially September, October that I actually got to essentially train as a full-time athlete. Versus this year, it's kind of been my main gig all year. So there's been a big difference. In my whole year's preparation versus just like the lead into this race and that race.
Wow. So as we get closer to the race here, what time are you aiming to go to bed?
Pretty early because I didn't have an afternoon nap. Like I usually have like a little nap around 1, 2. And I think just with the timing of getting in the practice swim and everything it just didn't happen that way. So I think 8 o'clock, I started shutting things down and closing my eyes.
Wow. So what time are you aiming to get up in the morning?
Yeah, so I wanted to be down. I wanted to leave the hotel at 5. So I woke up at 4:30. I don't wake up that much earlier. So 30 minutes is enough for me. My food's already ready. It's enough for me to get everything together. Everything's already in their bags, ready to go. You know, my kid is laid out. It's all I have to do is make coffee and eat my food, do a couple stretches, and then I head out the door.
Wow. So what kind of stretches are you doing the morning of before you even get going?
Yeah, just those activation exercises I told you about, like those bridges, clamshells, and then hip raises is another one I do. And then I roll out, like I do a full body rollout of spine, quads, calves. Yeah, I think that's it.
Wow. So what kit are you using? I know you're representing Bicycle World, right?
Yeah. So we have a specific Bicycle World racing team kit that was made specifically just for the Austin racing team and a few others for this year. It's a Castelli kit. It's
Nice.
a one piece.
You like it?
Oh yeah, it's very comfortable. Like, it's just where like the seated area. Like some kits are a little like the material just doesn't fit right, and you get chafed like 90 miles into the bike. Or it just is uncomfortable, and this one is not at all. There's like enough padding for the bike to where you don't feel like you need that extra padding come 90 miles, but then it's also not enough padding where you actually feel it on the run, like you're good. And I didn't chafe at all, which I think is part kit, but then part like all the body like slide stuff I put on me from SBR.
Right.
Which was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta put lube everywhere on the undercarriage.
Yeah.
So as you're getting your kit ready and all that fun stuff, how difficult is this with the one piece? Because you obviously want to use the bathroom the morning of the race, but you don't want to have to deal with the struggle of the one piece during the race.
Yeah, so it's easy. So you zip it up from the waist, but what I do is I never ever put the top on. So you put on the shorts, but then I just leave the top off literally until I'm ready to get in. And it just kind of hangs. That's why you see people with their kit tops hanging off the back, is because you don't want to have to like unzip it. And yeah, so I just wear a t-shirt over my sports bra and then my jacket and everything. And then right before I put my wetsuit on, do I actually put the sleeves on and zip it up.
Wow. Because this is going to be a wetsuit legal race.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you able to use the booties and a neoprene cap as well?
No, it wasn't cold enough.
No.
So yeah, one trick I do is I use 2 caps. So I used a neoprene swim cap, and then I put my Arizona swim cap over that, and that keeps my head plenty warm. And I didn't feel like the need for booties. It wasn't cold enough.
Okay. So you get up on race day, you get your breakfast, you stretch out, you roll out, you get everything ready. What time are you wanting to actually get to transition? Are you bringing your bike the morning of?
Yeah, I bring my bike the morning of because I like to have everything on it and just ready to go. So then I can just walk in and literally drop my bike off on the rack. So we left the hotel at 5 with my goal of being in transition at 5:15. Again, we could park super close. We knew exactly where we wanted to park, and we knew it would be close. So we got there at like 5:15, and that gave me plenty of time to I actually used their I never take a pump with me, and so I use their mechanics to pump up my tires. So that's honestly the only thing that I need to do race morning, because everything else is on the bike ready to go. And then and then I just dropped my gear bags off, because we can also do that race morning. And then we just started heading to the swim so that I could like truly take my time. I have swim bands as well, so to make sure to warm up the shoulders. And then I also wanted to get in the water race morning, which looking back, I don't know if it was the smartest idea, because we had to then stand around for a long time. But I got down early enough to where I could actually get a swim warm up in, because I made that mistake in Coeur d'Alene 70.3 in June, where I didn't get in the water because it was so cold. And then I literally went like where I lost my breath for like half the swim because it was so cold. And so this time I wanted to avoid that by getting in a good warm up.
Wow. So in transition, how are you setting up your bike? I know you're putting 95 PSI in there. You're using the 404 in the disc. For your nutrition, how are you setting this up, and how are you laying out your gear in the transition area?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the bike. I have the front hydration mount, and in that is just water. Then I have one bottle on the frame, and in that is 2 scoops of Generation UCAN. And I usually use the cranberry raspberry flavor, and that usually gives me about 60 grams of carbs right up front. And then in my, like the pouch on the frame, what do you call that? Like where you put your extra nutrition stuff. I always have base salts, a little container of base salts. I always have a couple of gels, just for some extra nutrition if I need it. And then I always have an e-boost shot, which I save for later on in the race.
What is an e-boost shot?
It's basically a caffeine shot. So there's like, I need to see how many milligrams of caffeine, but it's up there. It's like 180 milligrams of caffeine, and it's like an all natural, like with B vitamins. And it's supposed to give you that like pick me up, almost like a 5-hour energy shot, but there's no like ill feelings after that, and then you don't have that like drop in energy 5 hours later. Like you actually feel really good. And I think the biggest thing I find it is the alertness I have. Come mile 80 and 90 of a bike, you're just like like you really start losing that sharpness. And so when I take the shot at that point, like I feel like extremely awake, and so timed well. It really that, and then it also keeps my heart rate up, because that's also kind of the part of the time where your energy starts to go down, your power drops off, your heart rate goes down, which you don't want, and surprisingly, and it keeps my heart rate up, keeps my power up. And actually, looking on my notes, and I posted about it on Instagram the other day, right before I took it, Arizona is a 3-loop course, and it's slightly uphill and into the wind going out, and then it's downhill with a tailwind coming back. And strategically, I really wanted to push it going out that final loop to make up the most ground as possible. And so I took the shot right before that final loop going out into the headwind and uphill. And it was my highest power for the day. And I passed like Jody Robertson and Jessica Jones and a couple people on that spot.
Okay. So it seems like you could almost take that a little bit earlier in the bike then.
I could, yeah, but I didn't feel like I needed it. So I was trying to hold off as long as possible.
Right. Okay. So what are you putting in your bike and your run bags?
Yes. So the bike, I actually decided not to add anything else other than my helmet, which has a visor on it. So I didn't need to put sunglasses. So it literally just had my helmet. And so literally all I did the water is I took my wetsuit off and my goggles and cap, laid it down on the ground, grabbed my helmet, and I ran out of there. And that was it. Like I didn't put any socks on. I didn't put any arm warmers, any of that. And then the run bag, I kept it as simple, that simple as well. I had socks, and I had my run shoes. I had my race belt. I had an extra base salts that I always kind of stick in my bra as I run in case I need it. I don't think I had anything else in that bag. I think that was glasses.
Wow. So what about special needs? Are you using special needs at all?
I don't use special needs on the bike just because that bike course is crowded. If it was less crowded, obviously not being a 3-loop course, I would consider putting another bottle of Generation UCAN so I can stick to that fueling. And then, I don't put usually any tire supplies or anything because I had that on my bike. And then on the run, I have another e-boost shot with me, which I take at around mile 13. And then I also have some more salts in there. And then actually another thing I had was, I was very wary, even though I haven't had back issues for a long time, because this course is one that you're in aero position for the whole time. I mean, essentially, if you're doing it right, you should be very much tucked down to go as fast as possible versus a course where you sit up and you climb the hills. And with that, no matter how great a shape you're in, it's tough on the back. And so I actually put in like 2 ibuprofen into my, in a little container into my, my bike to run bag, but I didn't need it right away. And so I actually threw it down and the guys put it into my special needs bag. And funny enough, it was right at like mile 11, my lower back started hurting, which is weird because usually it starts to hurt. If it's going to hurt, it's going to hurt right off the bike. But at mile 11, it started hurting. I was like, oh, I have some ibuprofen, and I knew I was well hydrated and I could take, you would probably be wary of taking that kind of thing in an Ironman. But I took it and it definitely took care of my back issues. And what was great is I also usually get pretty stiff on the run. And like where your legs just get sore from the pounding. And I didn't have that much at all this race. And I think it was probably because I took the ibuprofen when I did it. That soreness, which typically slows me down the most more than anything, actually was not there. So, wow. So the video connection is off again. Do you want to try to, I know you can edit this out, but do you want to try to call again, or what should I do? Okay.
Yeah. Give me
Let's
just
do
a second.
that.
Call back.
Hi.
There you are.
Okay. Is that okay the way I did that? Like I waited till I finished my answer and then
yes, that is perfect.
So it's very disconcerting talking to you when I can't see you.
It's fine.
Okay.
Cool. I'm just taking notes along the way as well.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So being that we already know what you're putting in all your bags here, you're already done with T1. You put 95 PSI in your wheels. You're using your Oakley helmet. Again, I love the Oakley stuff. I'm a fan of Oakley. So you're getting down to the water. You're getting your practice swim in. How is the conversation between you and all the other racers and your support crew?
Man, I feel like it was, for the most part, non-existent because everyone was cold and trying to stay warm, and then they were focused at the task at hand. The conversation I had with one of the athletes, so Leslie Smith, who's another professional athlete, she actually came fifth. We used to be training partners right when we both started triathlon. And we did this race where we traveled together to Kansas 70.3. And it was such a rough race. And my husband was on the shore watching us, and he said we looked like a man overboard because our arms were just like all over the place and we're so far behind. And so we had this joke that whenever we had a bad swim, we'd refer it to as man overboard swim. And so she quipped like, let's make sure that we don't go man overboard in this swim. And what's funny is she had an awesome swim. I think she was like second out the water, and I had a man overboard swim, so I don't know if it jinxed me. But like that was the only real chatter between the athletes there. And then my husband was like, he always stands like right off to the side, and I was actually wearing his jacket to stay warm between the warm up and then us being able to get into water. And so as soon as I was done, or like as we're about to get in, I took off his jacket and I handed it to him. And yeah, we kind of, you give each other a look like, okay, go do this, and that's about it.
Wow. So I know you put on a wetsuit many, many times. For those that haven't put on wetsuits, what is your tips for putting on a wetsuit?
Get some help to really pull it up. So let me back up actually. One tip that I do, because a lot of people struggle with the legs, I actually cut the bottom of my legs, and I feel like that helps immediately with getting in and out of the wetsuit. So I just take a couple, I don't know, how many inches is that?
2-ish.
Yeah. So I take about just that much off, and that helps with getting it on. And then also putting body glide like on the areas where the wetsuit's going to get contact. So, the ankles, the wrists, the neck. And then once I pull it up, I don't do any of the plastic bags or anything. Again, I feel like cutting it actually helps with getting it on. And then once I have it on, my husband, like we take every little piece and we pull it up as much as possible. Like someone would say, give yourself a wedgie with the wetsuit to make sure you get as much mobility in the shoulders as possible. And we literally spend, while it's on, but we then spend another 10 minutes, like really trying to work it up over the shoulders so that I don't feel like it's restricting my stroke.
Wow. So do you put it on inside out?
No.
So
my wetsuit?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Like it's out. It's inside out while you put it on, and then while you put it on, it's right side out.
I've never tried that. I'll have to try that next time. But no, I've never done that.
Yeah, that's how I put it on mine. Is
okay.
I actually have it inside out, and then as I put it on, I can grab the inside of it while I'm putting it on.
Ah, very smart. I'm gonna try that next time, and I'll let you know how that goes.
You should. I mean, I know your next race isn't for a while, but
right,
you still got.
We'll
some time.
try it. Yes.
Man, so you're getting in the water here. The men pro go ahead and head out. Then y'all get in the water. How is your nervousness right now?
You know, a funny thing actually happened is they had like this ramp going down, and it was very slick with a step down, and you could easily like step off incorrectly. But then there was also like the ramp concrete. And I actually dived to get in the water, and I dived onto the concrete. And for a split second, I was like, I just broke my rib. Like I dived that hard onto like this concrete railing as you're getting off. And then they gave us like 30 seconds to get to the start line, and we had to actually swim them back. So the pro start was actually like, I want to say 30 meters back off the age group start, which was the weirdest thing because we all swam longer than the age groupers because they wanted to soften the blow of the first turn. So they were like, oh, we'll just start you further back before you get to turn one, so that turn one is not super aggressive because you literally hit it immediately. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, they pushed us back a little bit. So we had to swim to a buoy a little further back in the water. And we had like 30 seconds to get there. And we literally got there and the gun went off.
Wow. So it seems like it wasn't that organized.
It was, you know what it was? It was the first time they've ever done this swim. And so there was still a lot to be figured out to make it the most effective and smooth as well. And they literally decided to push us back to soften that turn the day before in the pro meeting. So I think it's just part of like new course. You know, they may do it differently next year. Who knows?
Right, because for those that don't understand this swim course, you really go up the river just about 100 yards or so, and then you turn right, and then you turn right again about 200 meters down or across the river. Then you go down the river for what is it, about 15?
A long time, 1800, I think is what they said.
1800, then you turn right, then right again, then you go back up the river for about 500 yards or 500 meters, and then you're right there at the swim exit on the same side of the river as the swim start.
Right.
I think I described that ish well.
Yeah, you did.
So how was the swim course for you?
It was one of those things. I wish I looked at the swim course map better to look at the turns and the tangents, because everyone swam a different line, and my line was bad. That's why my swim was way slower than I've ever swum before. But it seemed like, you know, we took that first right, and that's normal. But the river kind of winds a little bit, like it goes up and then winds to the left, and it looked a little bit, but it looked like everyone in front of me immediately went to like the shoreline and swam along the shoreline. All the pros swam along the shoreline versus along the buoy line, and I decided to swim along the buoy line instead. And as I said, the girls, I was way slower doing that. And I don't know if maybe there was a current. I have no idea as to why they did that. Or maybe it was slightly shorter. I'm not too sure at all. And then also the difference on this course is you actually swim into the sun. And the sun was just rising at that point. So you couldn't really see too far ahead. And then I think something they'll probably do better next year is have more buoys along the way, because there was only a buoy every 200 meters or so, where I feel like there's one every 100 meters. And that was the other thing. Like I felt like I was able to sight shorter off the buoys, versus here I would look up and like, where is the buoy? Should I swim to the shore? Should I swim straight? So I was for the most part, the most confused from me swim. As straightforward as the swim is, it's super straightforward. It's like a rectangle, but for some reason I just didn't take the best line and swam all over the place. And then coming back, and this is probably the biggest takeaway for anyone who's going to do this in Ironman Arizona, is swim along the buoy line coming back. Exactly, because the final turn, you have to take a red buoy turn on your left shoulder. And so what we were all doing is coming back, we were swimming along the shoreline, only to find we actually had to swim and cut back across to the red buoy to take it on our left and come back. So I easily swam like an extra, 50 to 60 meters, having to come back to that final turn buoy. Whereas had I just taken the straight buoy line back on it, I would have been on that red turn and just taken a left.
Wow. Hey, would you mind holding your mic a little bit? So that way
Yes.
It's not dragging on your jacket?
Yes.
Because it's like staticky every time it moves just a little bit.
Okay.
So with the swim here, being that it kind of makes a little bit of an S, which line did you take on the swim? You basically sighted on the buoys, which was the sun, and you kind of got off course? Is that what happened?
Yeah, no, I actually went straight to the buoy line, but because every time I sighted, the buoys were so far away from each other, I would look up to see if I was on course and really not be able to see too much. And my sighting was slower than usual because I wanted to make sure I was going the right way. But I took this pretty much the straight line on the buoy line as best as possible. But then coming back, again, I like all the other pro women actually went on the shoreline. And so I thought, let me be smart coming back and go on the shoreline coming back. And that was the stupidest thing to do because I then had to backtrack to get to that red buoy. So going out, I was on the buoy line, and coming back, I was just pretty much close to the shore the whole way and just trekking that in.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the map, and it's like if you look at the middle red buoy on the right side of the map, once you get there, you can literally go right on the shoreline and make that tangent just a little bit.
Right.
And then all the way to the last or the second to last turn on the bottom. And then you can make it a little bit shorter, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, I did not take that place, that part. I think they did.
Man, so as you're getting to T1, how does T1 go for you? You're in there just under 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, I honestly flew through T1 because I had such a disappointing swim and I knew I was so far back. So I felt like I sprinted through T1, grabbed my bag, took off my wetsuit as quickly as I could. I don't use the wetsuit strippers because some are really good and some really take more time than you just taking your wetsuit off. And I take my wetsuit off pretty quickly. And then it gets you in this precarious position sometimes when you're sitting and they're yanked on your leg and they don't get it off correctly. So I just decided not to do that. Took the wetsuit off myself. And then they put it in the bag for me in transition. And all I did was grab my helmet. And as I was running to my bike, I was putting on my helmet. That was it.
Wow. So for T1, how was the concrete here?
For me, it was still okay. There was still lines where it wasn't wet, but I had to almost zigzag and like pick my line to run on dry concrete. Further back, I could see where that could get dangerous. And I think some people asked them for next year to put red carpet like all the way to transition because it's with the change in the swim course, the transition was longer than last year. It was a pretty good run. And yeah, I mean, there were definitely like slick parts on the concrete for sure.
Wow. So you get to your bike and you head out on the bike ride. How does the first 5 to 10 minutes go?
Terribly, in that I couldn't get my shoes on.
Really?
My feet were so cold. And then I don't know, I'm totally getting new bike shoes because the cold air like made it very stiff. and it wouldn't like budge at all. Like the material of my bike shoe wouldn't open. And I literally spent a good 5 minutes easily trying to get my foot in the bike shoe. And I finally just like really shoved it in there and got in there. But I felt like, oh, I'm losing so much time after I just flew through transition to make up time. And now I'm sitting trying to put my bike shoes. Yeah, it was to a point I almost stopped to try to get off my bike. But I thought, man, I'd pedal and I'd be at a decent speed, coasting, try to put my shoe in for a second. And then it wouldn't work. And then I pedal again and then I try again. So that was my first 5-10 minutes.
What kind of bike shoes do you have right now that you use?
They're like these carbon Pearl Azumis. And I typically love it because it's a narrow shoe. And I feel like it fits well for my foot. But it just, yeah, as I said, the cold air just made the material super stiff. And then after that, like once I got going, like I had a goal power that I wanted to hit. And I was easily hitting that for the first, 5 miles. So I was like, okay, we're off to a good start, knowing that I'm doing that and my heart rate was coming down. So it was good.
Right. So before you actually get to the middle of the bike course, miles 15, 25, 35, how are you feeling?
Honestly, feeling good. Like, I feel like my bike's my strength. And so I was super, especially after the swim, like I was super excited to get on the bike. And it's my legs felt good. They're responsive, not always guaranteed. But again, I feel like I've now done this enough that I know the right taper protocol to where I know my legs are going to feel good going into a race. And I was putting out the power that I was wanting to at this right effort. And so, that just continued for the next like 15 to 20 miles. I did know that I was quite far back from the next girl in front of me. So I really wasn't concerned about looking at the road to like who I was going to catch. I was just trying to get as aero as possible and as comfortable as possible for that first stretch going out.
Right. I feel like a lot of people don't understand that there is this no man's land in the race where you can be basically racing entirely alone for the entire race. If you're just fast enough to be ahead of all the age groupers and slow enough not to be in the front pack of the pros.
Yeah, that's my life history of racing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'm always right off that pack, man. So honestly, I'm Operation Swim right now. I'm tired of it. So I'm ready, like 5K a day started yesterday. We're going to fix this problem.
Wow. So you're doing just a lot of swim sets right now.
Oh, yeah. Like I feel like my form is actually good enough. And I've done big swim blocks to where I've really seen improvement. I've just not done it for long enough. And so like you look at the 3 keys of swim improvement and it's make sure you have good form, make sure you have the right prescription of training, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then you need the right amount of volume to get to that certain level. And I haven't done that volume consistently enough, and then I didn't do it going into Arizona. I think that was honestly half of why my swim was terrible is, I had that ear infection going into Waco 70.3 we talked about. So for 2 weeks I didn't swim, and then it was taper from Waco, 1 week of training where I emphasized the bike and the run more than the swim, and then it was taper. And so if I look at it, I was like, I didn't swim nearly enough like the last, if we just look at the last 6 weeks of training. So I'm fixing that.
Wow. So going into this race, you actually use the Tower 26 just like you did with Waco, and now you're still using that in the off season? Totally.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing, they actually have a leaderboard on Tower 26. And when I started, I was on top of the leaderboard. Like I was in the top 5 of someone who did every single workout. And I really saw some great progression. And since Wisconsin, I dropped way off that leaderboard because, I was recovering from Wisconsin for essentially 2 weeks and ear infection and then taper. So my goal is to get back to the leaderboard.
Wow. So what is this leaderboard on Tower 26 before we start getting too much into the weeds of the bike?
It's basically, if you do the workout, you listen to the, because after every workout, you go in and you mark a green little check that you did it. And then he also does like a little intro into the workout and saying, you know, this is the goal for it. This is what you want to focus on. And so they have analytics where they pick up who listened to kind of like the coach speak before the workout, and then who does the workout by marking the green check. And then the analytics from that, a leaderboard, and it shows like the top 25 people from the last 30 days or whatever.
Wow. How much does this cost?
Man, I feel like you pay 3 months at a time, and I think it's like just over 200 for 3 months. I think it's 225. I haven't checked for a while. No, it's not bad. So it works out to $75 a month. So, and then Jerry, like the best thing is Jerry looks at every single one of my swims. So when I do a workout, I will post, everyone's divided into levels. So you have level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're assigned a coach, and I'm level 1 and Jerry's my coach assigned. And after a key workout, I'll say like, I did my 400s at this, I did my 300s at this or whatever. And he'll give me feedback on that. And then he always, you know, after the race, like I went in and said, my swim sucked, but it's on me. And he was like, don't be so hard on yourself. And anyway, so I feel like it just gives me that extra level, like, of accountability, having that for sure.
Wow. So just to kind of go back to the bike ride here,
you
get your shoes on finally, and you start getting into the groove of things. How does the first 50 miles go after you get your shoes on and you get into the groove of things?
Oh, good. Like I felt solid. I was pushing out the power I wanted. Like, I wanted to push around 200 watts. And that's exactly what I was pushing. My heart rate was, my other goal was ideally if things come together, this is the power I'm going to hit, but I'm also going to stay within a window of heart rate, which I know that I can sustain for the entire race. But I really wanted to push myself on this race. And so I was basically at the ceiling of my window for this entire race. But I would constantly check myself and say, you know, like, how do you feel? And I was like, oh, I feel fine. Even though I'm at that ceiling, I totally feel fine. And so, that was kind of anytime my heart rate would drop, power would drop, I'd make sure to pick up my effort accordingly. But I felt smooth, like legs were responding. Everything else was good. Wow.
So your nutrition plan, how are you executing your nutrition on the bike ride?
Yeah, sure. So I have the UCAN bottle on my bike and water. And so my goal is I want to try to get through that going out. So the first, I guess it's less than 20 miles. I want to drink all of that to make up for the swim. I also took a gel with that just to get some extra calories. And then after that, because the course is so crowded and I'm not going to do special needs, I just switched to Gatorade. And so every aid station, my goal was to get a Gatorade. However, the aid stations actually came up super quickly.
Really?
And yeah, like I felt like there were so many aid stations. And so what I did was if there was the first loop, the course was completely empty. So I was literally riding by myself. And so I made sure that I would get my Gatorade and I would have that on the bike and refill my front hydration, have one in the bottle holder. I would toss my bottle that had the UCAN once I'm finished with it. And then that way, when the aid stations got crowded on the second loop, that if I had to miss an aid station because it was super crowded, I wouldn't worry because I already had Gatorade. So an empty aid station, I would take maybe even 2 bottles of Gatorade. And the crowded aid stations, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. So, and then I just basically, my goal was to make sure I'm drinking 2 bottles of Gatorade each lap, which was low for me typically, but the weather was super cool. So I almost drank to thirst, and I felt that was enough.
Okay. So about how many calories an hour were you getting in?
I would say less than I actually planned to, because I wanted to get in at least 300 or so. I would say I ended up getting in just a little less than that, like 250 to 300.
Okay. So I know in Waco, you actually got a little bit more than that, 300 to 350.
I did. Yeah. And I think the difference was the weather was cooler. And then, I'm trying to think. I think I was so focused on not hitting anyone when I was passing them that I drank less because the second loop was very crowded. And I felt like I was saying literally just rode on the left side of the road because I was just passing one person after the next. And I was also riding at a speed that there was not, I think the whole race, only 3 or 4 age group guys passed me, and they were vocal about it as well. But it was very far and few in between. And so I think I was so focused on not hitting anyone, vocal, that I got behind on my nutrition.
Wow. So what about the road quality here? What was the road quality like?
Super smooth. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better.
Wow.
It's not a lot of chip seal. It's a super smooth road. Yeah. There were a couple, where you slab concrete together and it's like bump, 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 bump with the slab concrete. There's like that dip. There was a small section of that, but very, nothing much to even write home about.
Wow. So did you see a lot of flats or wrecks or mechanicals here?
Surprisingly, I actually saw quite a few flats. The only thing I can think of is that they were riding in the shoulder, which they really didn't need to ride in the shoulder at all because we had the whole road open to us. And I think, they sweep the main road, but maybe didn't sweep the shoulder as much. And then the people actually crashing was 0 this year. Last year,
that's awesome.
Last year was a lot because they said this year that they had extra time, 15 to 20 more minutes to get people in the water. And so they really took their time getting people in the water to try to spread out the course. And I can tell you that made a significant difference because last year I feel like there was packs of people riding 3 across, and the whole second and third loop we were affected by the race. Whereas this time the age groupers, yes, they were close to each other, but they were all right behind each other. There wasn't people riding across from each other. Does that make sense? And then the third loop was spread out. I didn't have to stay on your left at all, which is a huge difference from last year.
Wow. So how does miles 70, 80, and 90 go where you're wanting to get ready for the e-boost shot and then you're kind of getting into the no man's land? I know you ended up passing 4 of your female competitors along the bike ride. When did you actually start catching up to them?
I think it was right on that final loop. I think I caught one on the second loop, and then I caught the rest on the final loop. And honestly, the goal was to ride that final loop as hard as I could. Knowing, yes, it may affect my run, but I felt like my best opportunity to do well was to have a really strong bike split. And so that's what I did, pushing out. And I think passing those 3 girls going out on that third loop gave me confidence and actually gave me a lot of energy. And so, I just really kept up the pace, and the e-boost shot helped. As I said, I felt more energized than, or just as energized as if I just started by taking the e-boost shot. I'd stayed on my nutrition, so I felt that was good. And so I pushed it going out, knowing I was going to have a tailwind coming in. And then I really just tucked in and just rode as hard as I could with the tailwind coming in. Into T2.
So mentally, I mean, you're not able to talk to anybody for roughly 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the hour and some change on the swim. Mentally, how are you holding up? Because that's a long time not to talk to anybody.
Again, I felt like we had to focus so much of all the people out there that kept me occupied. And then honestly, just continuously testing myself to give my best effort at all times, monitoring my heart rate, my power, my cadence, that kept me engaged. And then I felt like because I was doing so well, that kept me engaged. I felt like I was able to give my best effort at all times. And me telling myself that through the ride got me excited because, when you're in a race where you're either you have excuses going through your head of oh, I'm going to tell this person this excuse, or you have man, after this race, I'm going to say this. And my thing that I was going to say is, I can honestly tell you, I gave you my best effort for this entire bike and the run. Not the run, but while my swim time was slow, that was my best effort for the day.
Wow. So going into the later portion of the bike ride after you take your e-boost shot, miles 90 through 110 or so, how are you holding up, and are you knowing that you're hitting your power goal that you wanted to hit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're on a downhill coming back. That's what's awesome about this course is like you go up and headwind and then you turn around and then the last 17 miles is, or a little more than that is tailwind. And so you're just flying and so then you're just excited that you're almost at the run and this is kind of the way home. So yes, I felt good.
Nice. So
there's nothing else to say.
Are you doing anything to start preparing to start running? I know we kind of mentioned that in not Arizona, but in Waco.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit different because there was a swim and it's a full distance. Are you doing anything differently?
Yeah, in the past, I actually would have backed off and maybe got up and stretched my back a little bit and, just make sure I really stay on top of nutrition. But again, this was, I wanted every minute to count. And so I literally pushed it all the way in. And the only thing that slowed me down the final 2 miles was getting out of my shoes. So luckily getting out of my shoes was much easier into my shoes. So that was pretty smooth.
All right. So as you're getting into T2, how does T2 go for you?
Oh, fine. Actually, I handed off my bike and my first steps were like shockingly bad.
Really?
And so much so that I laughed because I was like, no, like I knew I pushed it on the bike and I wasn't sure how the run was going to go because it was my ceiling across the board, my highest power, my highest heart rate I've ever done for an Ironman. And I didn't stretch my back or sit up to stretch done in past Ironmans. I just try to stay as aero as possible. And so those first steps was shockingly bad. Like I didn't know if I was going to run actually. And then slowly it worked its way out. And I remember laughing all the way through T. And I felt not fatigue wise, but just like my hips were super tight. And then I got into T2 pretty smooth. I mean, I sat down and run shoes on, socks on, shoes on, and then I grabbed my hat and transition belt, and I only put that stuff on as I'm like running out of T2.
Wow. I mean, you had a blazing fast T2 time of 1 minute and 42 seconds, but that was actually like the 6th fastest T2 of the day.
Which is crazy because I thought I was flying through T1 and T2, and I actually looked as well to see like how much did I beat everyone? Not at all. Like Heather and Jen and everyone was faster than me. Yeah, which is crazy.
Like, there was one I think of 1 minute and 1 second or something like that. I think it was Jeanette. I think had the fastest T2 of like I think it was like 67 seconds, which is just nuts.
Yeah, which the only thing I can think is I ran super gingerly into T2, so they must have just flew off the bike. And then like from like the tent out, then we're maybe the same. So I don't know.
Right. I mean, and then if you kind of look at the overall standings, I mean, those seconds don't really matter. I mean, nobody at this race finished within 40 seconds of each other. I mean,
right. Yeah, but for me, it's about momentum. Like just being, while we didn't finish that far from each other, when I got off the bike in T2, I was only a couple minutes back from Leslie, who was just in front of me. And then like Jessica Jones was only 2 minutes behind me. So had I really lollygagged, if Jessica was a minute behind me, maybe she would have got like the encouragement to try to run me down. Whereas now she didn't because I was still faster.
Right. So you don't want that to be an issue here.
Yes.
Wow. So as you're heading out on the run course, how does the first mile go?
Good. I mean, I was running, let's have a look here. I ran a 7:17. I was feeling the bike a little bit, but I was encouraged by the fact that I was still running low 7s. Honestly, with the way that my run training had gone, I was hoping to run faster than that and then hold on as long as possible. So I was actually hoping to see like 7 to 7:10 pace for as long as possible, but I was more in the 7:15 to 7:20 pace. The splits on the tracker are totally wrong because it has like everyone coming out at like 8:30 to 9:30 pace, and that's, I think, a timing match just not in the right place.
Really?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty common.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like if you look at everyone's race splits, it's like all over the place, but that's not just this race. That's like all races where they do not match up with our actual paces because like I write down and I've written down every single mile 1 through 26, and there's not more than 10 seconds difference between mile 1 and up till like mile 18, whereas the tracker is like ping pongs all across the board there.
Wow. So for your nutrition plan for the run, are you just going off of on-course nutrition?
Yeah. I just basically take what I feel like every aid station. And so I'm like, okay, this is a good time to take Gatorade because I need electrolytes, I need hydration, I maybe need some more water. And so I literally just kind of grab as I felt. And then, if I feel like, this is a good time to take Coke or base salts or maybe take a gel. So yeah, I just kind of grab every single aid station as I feel.
Okay. So when did you actually see your Sherpas for the run course?
They were right at the exit of T2. And then they got to tell me that I was like 3 minutes behind the next girl in front of me. And then you go out and you run back, and then I saw them again, and they got to tell me how far the girl behind me was. So I got to see them at essentially mile 0, and then again at like mile 2.
Okay, so this course is a little bit different because you run on both sides of the river, and you also have like, not necessarily loops, but like side passages that you have to do on each side of the river where you don't see the same place. I mean, it's basically like a hole on each side of the river. You have one that looks like a triangle and one like a square.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And as you head out, you actually go towards the east, the same way you're running or the same way you're swimming.
Yeah.
And then you go down, make a U-turn, then you can head back. So that way it's like an out and back of about a mile here. Mm-hmm. Is that where you started seeing some of the competitors?
Yeah, so I saw the girl in front of me at that point. She was kind of heading back as I was heading out. And I could see, and she's a good runner, Leslie Smith. She ran like a low 3-hour marathon, and she was moving well. So I knew that for me to catch her, something would have to go wrong. And then I saw the girl behind me. As I took the turnaround, I actually always split my watch. And so I looked at the time and I saw that she, at that point, she was 800 meters or like 3 minutes and 30 seconds behind me at that point. And then that got confirmed with my husband saying she was that far behind me. So, and then and I do that on the course. Anytime there's an out and back, like as soon as I see that someone is maybe in front of me or behind me and moving the opposite direction. So like Leslie is running away from me. So I then stop tracking her. But if I know there's someone behind me, but like if Leslie was moving slower and I was catching her, I would have tracked on every out and back. And then the girl that was behind me, like I was keeping an eye on me on tracking those out and back sections. And then as soon as we got to a point where, like you said, there was that square at the top, if I didn't see her between those sections, then I knew I was good. Right. Not that you can guarantee anything because people blow up all the time, the final miles, but I knew I was making ground.
Wow. So as far as the first 10 miles of the run course, how does this go for you?
Yeah, good. I mean, I felt good. My heart rate was where I wanted. My pace was a little slower than I wanted, but it was staying even. And so I just knew at that point that it was just because I biked to my capacity for this. So I couldn't expect to have now this blazing fast run, which I thought I was capable of, but not after biking as hard as I did. But as I said, like my splits through the first 13 miles, like I think I went through 13 miles in like 136 or 137. And it was pretty even at like that 720 to 730 pace all the way through with a couple in the 715 to 20 range.
Wow. So what are you actually thinking about while you're running? I mean, you're sitting here running and you have all this time in your head. I mean, yeah, there's Sherpas, there's people out there spectating, cheering you on, but what are you really thinking about?
It's very different for every race, but for this race, the biggest thing I was constantly asking myself is, are you giving your best effort? And I really was. Like, if I felt at any time that I was slacking off, then I would like turn it up and say, no, you gotta give more. Even though I was maybe only 6 miles into the marathon, I was like, for this moment, I need to be giving everything I have and be on my ceiling. For my heart rate and effort, for this distance. Man, I didn't think too much else. I always think about my daughter when I race. I feel like that's a constant, and I always try to picture her face, or, it's just so many memories, I guess. I'll channel like the memories that I have with her, and which, and in a sense, like I want to know that my effort out there racing is worth it. For me to be out, it's just worth it for me to be putting in all this effort away from her. And I feel like that's a huge motivator for me. And then just, seeing my husband out there, and we had a family friend out there too. And I just want to do them a solid. Like, they've spent their whole day there. Obviously my husband is day in, day out with me, but just for that day, like, they've been up since, 5 a.m. to come cheer me on. I want to make sure that I do my best by them as well. So since they're right there,
Wow. As you're getting closer to the midway point, I know your back was hurting and you took an ibuprofen.
I did.
So how was this resolving?
You mean did the ibuprofen work? Is
Yes.
essentially your question?
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. It took about a half a mile to a mile before I actually felt it ease off. And then I felt like I was able to, I don't actually think my pain, my stride or speed changed. It was just now I'm running without pain, so I maybe only had pain for, I want to say 2 to 3 miles in the run. And another thing that actually happened, I think it was mile 6, is I had this weird pain on the top of my foot, so much so that I thought I was actually going to drop out. It was just like the sharp pain that started, and it happened for a couple steps. And then I adjusted my stride to where I didn't push off at all. Like, I'd literally run with my toe up and just pull by the hamstring, which I've learned to do because I've learned running through pose technique. And then it went away. So I was hoping that I wouldn't drop out, but B, I wouldn't have to run like that, because it's awkward to run like that for the rest of the way. But I'd say like not even a mile later, the pain went away. So that was cool.
Wow. So as you're approaching miles 15 through 23, how are these miles going for you?
I felt good. Again, I was just focused on my race to give my best effort. I remember I ran through transition, and the last half marathon, I was like, okay, I'm really going to give it. And there were times that I would just breathe super loudly. And there were times that I would really pump my arms really hard, just because if I felt my cadence dropped off, I know that pumping your arms brings your cadence back up. And there were a couple people in transition saying on a speaker saying, man, let's go or whatever, watch out. And I thought it was actually super funny, because here I was grunting at mile 13, pumping my arms like a crazy woman, and I still had half a marathon to go in an Ironman. So anyway.
Wow. So I know there's just a little bit of gain here of like 500 feet on the run course. Did you feel like that was hard for you?
No, I actually liked the switch of the hills. It was just a change in I don't know how to explain it, but it gave me something different to think of. You have your normal rhythm on the flats that you're in, and then just to work, be it slightly harder, I felt like it got me more engaged. And actually every single hill, if there was someone around me, I would make sure to, if they were in front of me, or drop them. There was actually a pro male. We actually spoke for a second. His name, funnily enough, was Sasha, because when he asked my name and I said Natasha, he was like, no way, I'm Sasha. But we were running for probably a good part of the first half marathon together, and I would drop him on the hills. And that was kind of like a little play, and that gave me confidence to continue to like be excited about the hills because I was running them really well.
Wow. So how are the final few miles of the run course for you?
Oh, man, fine. I mean, it was the first time in an Ironman where I wasn't super sore in the legs. I was tired, that's for sure. And so you have that natural slowdown. And then I was just to a point where like I was digging so deep just to run my best pace. I knew that I wasn't going to catch Meredith Kessler, who was now in front of me, but I knew I could run a PR for both marathon and have an overall PR for my Ironman. So I just kept running as hard as I possibly could. It was slower.
Wow. So tell me about the finish shoot here. What is this experience like for you here?
Yeah, I mean, you basically run up the road, and instead of taking a left to run the second loop, you just go slightly further. And it's not a very long shoot. It's just like take a left and you have your grandstands. And what's great about it, it's downtown. So it's very accessible for friends and family to see one finish. You can get there from all angles. I was so tired, and I was also so excited about getting to that finish line. Like most people would, high five random people on the side. And my husband actually took a video of me finishing. And so I saw him and I waved and smiled at them, but then I just ran as quickly as I could to the finish line and didn't really high five anybody because I just wanted that time.
Wow. So after you finished, what'd you do next?
I had a couple athletes that I coach that were still racing. And then a bunch of people from Austin were out there on the run course cheering us on, but then also racing. And so I immediately changed, and then we looked at the tracker and we could see where everybody was. And I could see a bunch of the athletes that I coach were just about to come through the main cheer area. And so I digress. I first had a massage. So I went from the finish line. I had a 10-minute massage, which really helped with recovery. I met my husband and Pam, who was there, the family friend. We chatted a little bit, but then I changed immediately at a restroom that was there, and I went out on the course to cheer on my athletes. And I'm glad I did because they were actually having some stomach issues. And so I kind of got to, give them some suggestions on things to try to get rid of the stomach issues.
All right. So looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you feel like you were?
I feel like as prepared as I could have been. Like, I wish, as I said, like I feel like I found the right formula finally for the way that I should train. And that's working for me right now. I had X amount of weeks to train that way. And that's what I took into this race. I'm super excited about next year because now I can train that way starting right now. Like I know what I need to do. I just now need to do it.
Gotcha. Well, we covered quite a bit about your race. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No. I mean, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Nice. Well, what's something that you learned from this race that you'd like to pass on to someone who hasn't done this race before?
It's a great race. I mean, if you're considering doing an Ironman, I would highly recommend Ironman Arizona, basically for all the reasons we discussed as far as the ease of logistics, the course. It's a super spectator-friendly course. The town just embraces the race. So if anyone is considering doing an Ironman, definitely recommend Arizona. And then the other thing that's great about Tempe is like the weather is always solid. It's very rare that you actually get a bad weather day. The times I've done it, it's been like 50 to 70 degrees, which is absolutely perfect. And then I would say, so one of my athletes actually, he didn't wear a full wetsuit. He wore a sleeveless wetsuit thinking he would be totally fine. And he didn't do the practice swim the day before to feel if that would be fine. And so I think a takeaway would be the lesson that he learned, because I would hate for that to happen to anyone else again, is that make sure you do have a full wetsuit, or if you really prefer the sleeveless wetsuit, test it the day before. And that way, you know that, man, if it is too cold, then you can wear a full wetsuit the next day and not get hypothermia, which he got. He actually got pulled from the water. He was one of those guys that was absolutely shaking.
Wow.
He just wasn't prepared for 61, but he was in a sleeveless wetsuit. So,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Is he doing okay now?
Yeah, he's totally fine. He actually came out onto the run course to cheer me on. And I was like, what are you doing? I was so surprised. And he told me, he got pulled from the water, and I felt so bad for him. But like any triathlete, you have the down of something bad going in a race, but he's already focused on what's next, which is awesome.
Wow. Well, just to wrap up here, I know you're a little limited on time, and so am I. So we'll just conclude with, who would you actually want to hear from in the future, being that I already know what your definition of a perfect race is?
Say that again?
If you could hear from anybody that has done a race that I haven't had on the show before, who would you want to hear from?
Wow. I think everyone always likes to hear from those that are on the top of the field, right? Because you want to know, like, from the smallest detail, like what power are they pushing and pace are they pushing, and even to like what gear they're using and PSI in their tires. You always want to learn from the best. So, just everyone who's crushing it out there, which there's a lot. Like, that's the other thing, is like there are so many pros that are the names of the Daniela Rafes and the Marinda Carefrees, but there are also many that have been in the sport for so many years and so well educated in what they're doing. Any of those pros. I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and I've listened to a lot of the pros just to see like what are they doing, and see if I can learn anything from them. So anybody.
All right. Well, Natasha, it's been great having you back on. I've enjoyed it, and I look forward to following you in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate the time, and thanks for everything you do for this.
You're welcome. You have a good day, okay?
Okay. Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.